And right now, they are trying to not only rig the midterms, but potentially rig the next election by making sure that we have more of these complacent, complicit folk continuing to run the House, because honestly, they just do whatever he tells them to do.
Texas has always been found to be intentionally discriminatory. And so I want y'all to understand the makeup of my state. The state is a majority minority state. And what this legislature historically has done is what they plan to do again, is to dilute the voices of people of color in order to make sure that they can get to where they're trying to go.
So if you haven't been following this story, it's actually pretty interesting. Congressional Democrats are currently having a freak out over what they are describing as Donald Trump and Greg Abbott's plan to rig the 2026 midterms. Now, objectively, this is something that would give a massive electoral advantage to the Republican Party, but I have to say I disagree, frankly, with both of those framings. This is actually the Republican plan to unrig the 2026 midterms, make them actually truly fair from a competitive perspective, make them more representative of the democratic voice of the people of this country, and we'll explain exactly why we say that in today's video. But with that said, this story all comes as just recently here, you may have heard that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has directed his state legislature to run a special legislative session to do mid-decade redistricting. That is essentially the redrawing of Texas's congressional maps. This is a move being massively endorsed, obviously, by Republicans and President Trump, and we'll explain to you what exactly is happening on this front in today's video, and hence why there is so much freak out. So with that said, guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing is not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can personally stay up to date with all of our latest news and coverage. We're almost at 500K. Help us get there. Smash that red button. With that said, as we just brought up here, about 2 weeks ago, Governor Abbott is calling a special legislative session to do redistricting. This move is something that is being reported could result in a gain of 2 to 4 Republican House seats automatically just by the redrawing there in the midterms. It's worth noting as well that the state of Ohio is currently floating the same idea, which could potentially result in a gain of 5 to 6 just automatically. And what's noteworthy here, hence why the Democrats are really not happy about this, they're basically baking in this assumption that 2026 will be a blue wave, but as we've been covering, that is far from guaranteed. You look at the current polling of the congressional ballot, they are way underwater in comparison to where you would think they should be right now. The mass uprising against Trump, all this stuff, the midterm backlash, it's just not really materializing. But this is very interesting, right? When you factor out the true toss-up races and include, tilt, lean, the close but likely to be Republican electorates there, right? If you bake that all in, going into 2026 with some mid-decade redistricting, Republicans would already enter the midterms having 218 seats. Again, judging for those close but should be Republican victories there, right? Which would automatically give them the House majority. And then when you're looking at the 12 true toss-up races, that's just extra credit, right? So obviously this is something that they're massively pissed off about, and of course endorsed by Trump. Take a listen here to the details of what is currently happening, and then we'll explain to you in a second why the Democrats' moral posturing about this is completely ridiculous. Again, we're making the midterms more fair, as we'll show you in a second. But first, take a listen.
Hi, Harris. Well, the president hopes this move is going to give Texas Republicans 5 more seats in the House. And he says if blue states want to follow, he says he doesn't have a problem with that. Now, states will typically redraw and update their district lines every 10 years. But President Trump's team has been pushing Texas to redistrict earlier as the GOP tries to defend a narrow majority in the House. All of this comes after the U.S. Department of Justice sent a letter to Governor Abbott saying 4 congressional districts here in Texas may have been drawn using unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. That letter focused on blue districts in the Dallas and Houston areas. The president asked about this by reporters earlier this week.
And then what if California, New York, Illinois, and other blue states?
Yeah, well, that's okay, too, but 5. I think we get 5. and there could be some other states. We're going to get another 3 or 4 or 5 in addition. Texas would be the biggest one.
And the president posted on Truth Social and said in part, I keep hearing about Texas going blue, but it's just another Democrat lie. With the right candidate, Texas isn't going blue anytime soon. Well, Democrats, they are bashing the president, calling the move a power grab.
All options will continue to be on the table as it relates to our efforts to push back legislatively and legally in Texas as it relates to this illegal, unconstitutional and egregious effort to rig the elections and gerrymander the maps in Texas. With respect to what happens in other states.
And next week, Texas lawmakers are going to sit down for a special session, and they're going to address this redistricting. Harris.
Now, there are a couple of things worth noting here, which is first and foremost, despite all of the moral posturing that we hear about gerrymandering and how it's racist, and they always try to bring up these old civil rights tropes about how Republicans can only win the elections if they gerrymander. That Democrats gerrymander too. As a matter of fact, you can make a strong argument they gerrymander significantly worse and more egregiously than Republicans, which is why, frankly, I just do not buy into the moral posturing about this stuff at all. It's like the reality ultimately is this. Both parties are going to draw their respective legislative districts in their own favor to some extent. Okay, stop freaking crying about it. And again, if you don't believe me, if you're going to buy this narrative that somehow the Democrats have been playing fair, this is just a Republican power grab. Okay, I bring you as just one example and perhaps one of the most visually obvious cases of Democrat gerrymandering. This is, of course, the congressional district map of the state of Illinois. And I want to ask everyone here what they notice. Does something seem a little bit strange about this? That is right. Okay, first of all, look at this congressional district in yellow. It's like this skinny line cutting across two other congressional districts. You mean to tell me, that's a legitimate Democratic district that, represents the interests of people of the state? No, that's called gerrymandering. Look at this. It goes through the purple one, and it's like cut off here. The one in Champaign goes all the way down to almost St. Louis, but then the purple it's completely ridiculous. Look also at the green one on the top, right? You mean to tell me that's a legitimate congressional district? No, absolutely not. Again, because why? Democrats gerrymander too. I'm once again saying here, that's arguably worse than anything Republicans are presenting. I mean, utterly ridiculous. Of course, it's worth noting at the same time on California, because the Californians are having a big issue here. Here's some math for you to understand, because these maps might be kind of confusing. Okay, so in 2024, Kamala Harris only won 58% of the vote. In California, Donald Trump got somewhere around 40 to 41%, if I'm not mistaken. Yet the Republican Party, in terms of congressional seats in California, only won 17% of the House seats there. Why do you think that is the case? Does that sound very Democratic to you? No. It's because, of course, as by the way, you can't really blame them because they have the political power. I just don't enjoy the virtue signaling about it. The California Democrats obviously draw the congressional districts to their own advantage. The same is true in Maryland. The same is true in New York. The same is true everywhere, because this is simply how it goes. Now, with that said, on the flip side, it's worth noting that what is currently being debated in Texas, the reason why the Department of Justice, of course, sent this memo to the Texas government stating that the districts were likely unconstitutional, and by the way, gerrymandering, is that again, all this talk about gerrymandering is because of the fact that if you look at this congressional district in the Fort Worth to Dallas area, they are looking to get rid of this. This is not a district that Republicans are looking to draw. No, they're looking to get rid of it. And by getting rid of this, Democrats are claiming that we are hurting Democratic representation and encouraging gerrymandering. Look at that thing. Does that look like a fair district to you? No. And largely speaking, by the way, the big issue here is the sort of old civil rights doctrine when it comes to, you may have heard of this from like a long time ago, the majority minority districts, right? Essentially this idea that we ought to give representation to black voters. If you remember, the original history of gerrymandering is basically back to the old civil rights South. They would draw these manipulative congressional maps to basically disenfranchise political representation for black voters while increasing the white Southerner vote, all that stuff, right? Okay. So with all of that in mind, you look at a map like this, essentially what is the DOJ claiming now is that the opposite is happening, right? You are violating constitutional norms to essentially draw districts that favor or disproportionately represent black voters, which guess what ultimately does what? Favor the Democrats. Again, look at that map right there. It truly does speak for itself. So actually, that's why I bring up the whole case to say, number one, why did I say we are unrigging the midterms or making them more fair in a sense? Because when you compare to Illinois, if they draw their congressional maps in their favor, first of all, there's no reason we shouldn't do the same. But also, secondly, we're not gerrymandering. We're getting rid of gerrymandering because Democrats are overly represented in the state of Texas because of, as you can see, quite ridiculous districts like this right here. That's a congressional district. I mean, are you absolutely freaking kidding me? Absolutely right. This has to be gotten rid of. And, you know, this is just not constitutional in any way. I mean, again, but why do Democrats not call this gerrymandering? Because this current drawing, of course, is favoring their political party. And that's obviously how this all goes. Scott Jennings brought up this very issue himself, right? Noting here that Abby Phillips is like, oh, the gerrymandering. Well, first of all, when Democrats did this in Illinois and got a 14-3 delegation for Democrats, where there's way more Republicans in Illinois than 14-3. Maryland, another state I brought up, 7-1. Massachusetts 9-0. Of course, New York being the case. The posturing about gerrymandering here is ridiculous. We're unrigging the midterms. As I said, take a listen.
So what does it signify that Republicans ahead of the midterms believe that it's going to be so necessary to get an upper hand that they have to actually redraw an entire state's congressional maps in order to get 5 whole seats out of it?
Oh, probably the same thing that it signifies when they did it in Illinois and got a 14-3 delegation for D's. Maryland 7-1, Massachusetts 9-0. We know what happened here in New York, California. Even though they have a commission, we all know what goes on there.
In a mid-cycle specifically, are all of those cases in mid-cycles?
All of these cases are where Democrats use the power they have to give them an advantage.
But just to be clear, because I didn't do the research that you did in the break here, is it that they're changing it after the actual census process where you're supposed to you're supposed to go through the congressional redistricting process?
Does it matter?
Yes, it does.
Very much.
I think that's the whole point.
So it's okay for Democrats to lopside these states. 9-0 in Massachusetts.
Here's what I will say about this. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, well, a couple of things. First of all, Abby, what does it say that Democrats are freaking out about this? You want to say, what does it say that Republicans are scared about the midterms? No. I thought Democrats are supposed to have a blue wave year. After all, Trump is the incumbent. You keep saying he's unpopular, right? He definitely riles people up. Why are you concerned? 5 congressional seats. What difference is that going to make? Aren't you headed to another 30, 40 seat sweep like in 2018 or 2006? Oh, but you know that's not the case. They actually understand that the midterms are on track to be quite competitive, and that's why 5 seats potentially, this might tip the whole balance of power. Yeah, because, first of all. Secondly, though, right, on the front of mid-decade redistricting, I don't understand, but it's doing in the middle of the decade. There's plenty of precedent for this in history. And by the way, it's also worth noting that in the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, you may remember, one of the big issues was mid-decade redistricting because the liberal justice in that case was claiming that she was going to redraw the map to be more Democrat favorable. Okay? So this happens all the time. Legal concerns over congressional districts, there's, that have to ultimately be redrawn and a lot of that stuff. Civil rights lawsuits, which is exactly what the DOJ is doing right now. Plenty of precedent for this in history. Okay, so just so people understand that. Yeah, it might be like the first time you're hearing about it, but this, of course, guys, is nothing new, especially again when those civil rights issues come up, which in this case is happening because essentially white voters are being disenfranchised using the abuse of the whole majority-minority principle. Which, of course, is worth noting, never happens in the reverse, right? You never get minority representation of white voters in an area where they're the minority, like a major city or something. But, it's always done in the reverse and always coincidentally favors what? Not just black voters, but Democrats. Notice how that works. But with all of that in mind, of course, Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is out of Texas, has been having a panicked meltdown all week long over the premise that Texas will not only be redrawing some things, but potentially, who knows, right? Maybe, could happen. In the process of all of this, she could potentially lose her congressional seat. Not saying that's going to happen. I'm not sure exactly if Houston is being looked at here, but I do have to say, Greg Abbott, you could do something very funny. I mean, just consider it. But anyways, take a listen here to the meltdown. And of course, she's going to claim that it's racist and all that. So here you go.
Texas is a majority minority state, and they don't feel comfortable having to go and present their very much racist policies, the policies that people like the Proud Boys are excited about, the people like the Oath Keepers, people like, we saw on January 6th, those guys. So that's what they're going to do. They are going to minimize people of color's voices, and they truly believe that by pushing their white supremacy agenda, they will be able to then secure more Republican seats. I've got news for them. I believe in the people of Texas, and I believe that this may backfire in a really unprecedented way. In fact, I will tell you confidently that there are absolutely Republicans that currently are serving that are concerned as well, and they should be concerned that this may backfire on them as they try to create these seats, because there will be new vulnerabilities. And I promise you, I am going to do everything that I can to make sure that Texans know what is at stake and understand that they are trying to basically put their voices on mute, and it is time to raise the volume on their voices. And so we will work and outwork this gerrymander to make sure that Texas actually shows up and shows out, and Donald Trump is left being the crybaby that he is. We only have 4 seats that are represented by black folk, where the vast majority of the people that get to decide who they have represent them are black. They decided to attack 3 of the 4 seats that we have in the state. They decided to go after a Latina. They are specifically deciding to splinter the communities of common interest, as well as just blatantly say, we are going to dilute minority voices. So we know that the courts, ever since we've had a Voting Rights Act, have always found this state to be intentionally discriminatory. That is what they are going to do. So I need people of color to understand that the scheme of the Republicans has consistently been to make sure that they mute our voices so that they can go ahead and have an oversized say in this. So I fully anticipate that's exactly where they're going with this map.
No, Jasmine Crockett. Again, the issue is the majority black districts are just straight up gerrymandered. Again, look at that map. Look at that map. No, the issue actually is that in the name of racial supremacism or woke ideology or whatever you want to call it, okay, they're actually disproportionately overly enfranchising black voters in the state and under-enfranchising basically everyone else. And there's no reason, frankly, why that ought to be okay. Do you see that done in California, for instance? Which, basically nowadays, if I'm not mistaken, is a plurality Hispanic state. Okay, do the whites get a disproportionate representation? Because they're the minority there, right? Even in Texas, by the way. In Texas, whites are the minority, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least not a majority, right? Where's the representation? So, this is, again, just put that map on the screen. This is what they're calling the gerrymandering. Of course, House Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who already has enough problems heading into the midterms because his leadership, his party is not popular. Again, 19%. I thought this was supposed to be easy, buddy. What's going on now? Is similarly claiming this is a Republican scheme to rig elections by, again, getting rid of this district on your screen. Take a listen.
And these Republicans are trying to disenfranchise millions of voters in Texas as part of a scheme to rig the midterm election. What we're committed to doing as Democrats in New York, in California, in New Jersey, across the country, is make sure that the congressional maps are as fair as possible. The people of Texas are at risk of not having fair maps. We have a responsibility of making sure that we look at every single state of the union and do what we can to ensure that we maximize fairness in those jurisdictions.
They want to maximize fairness, he said. I wish I could interview these people myself and just hold the pictures, okay? What make them defend this, okay? So maximizing fairness means keeping this map right here, right? This one in place. Hold on, let me extend the screen there. Okay. It means defending this congressional map right here and this one right here. That's what maximizing fairness looks like, clearly, guys. Getting rid of that, changing that to be more logical, obvious. Oh, no. Of course. Now, with all of that in mind, expectedly here, Democrats are threatening to basically counter this. You just heard that California House Democrats are looking themselves to get 5 to 7 more seats in congressional mid-decade redistricting being pushed by Gavin Newsom, to which I again say, you guys are already caught in gerrymander to begin. Oh, if Republicans gerrymander, we're going to do it too. You already gerrymander. What? Oh, wow. We're real scared of that, right? I mean, unbelievable. And on this front as well, according to CNN here, House Democrats are actively preparing for political trench warfare against the GOP in next year's midterms, with talks taking shape behind these scenes to mount a counterattack against President Trump's power play in Texas. Power play, he says, to aim to cement GOP control of Washington for the rest of the second term. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and his political team have begun privately shaping a legally risky and likely expensive strategy to redraw House maps in several Democratic-controlled states. According to Democrats briefed on the effort, they're exploring their plans in California, New York, New Jersey, Minnesota, and Washington state in hopes of flipping at least a handful of Republican seats next November. Well, again, I'm real scared considering you guys already do this, but on that front, it's also worth noting that you can't just redraw districts how you want. The issue is they have to hold up in court. This is why specifically Texas and Ohio are two of the current concerns, and the reason why they're doing redistricting, because they believe they have a strong case there that they can legally defend, for instance, right, getting rid of this congressional district. The reason why, of course, it stands as legally risky, as CNN is noting it, is that if the court sees it and reviews the congressional map and says, hey, forget your revision, your current congressional maps are actually unconstitutional, they're not fair, they're gerrymandered, then you could also see a backfire scenario where lawsuits result, for instance, Illinois, I think that's a prime example of the opposite happening, right? Of them actually losing seats in their own states because people realize, hey, you're already freaking gerrymandering. So I say the Democrats go ahead, right? Go ahead. See if your attempts to do this actually hold up in court, because I will tell you right now, I mean, I'm not a prophet or anything. I think this one will. It's ridiculous to begin with. They're getting rid of it. They're making it more fair. It's more democratic, okay? You know, obviously, I'm not here to have a deep debate about the virtues of democracy or something, but it's kind of hard to argue fairness when in blue states where, you know, Republicans are 30 to 40%, they're only getting 10 to 15% of the representation. So there you go. Fully encourage, and hopefully the messaging on this stuff gets through, because I'm sure this is a big argument they're going to make. And then, you know, Republicans on gerrymandering. It's not true. We need to aggressively push back against that narrative, okay? They're the ones who are the egregious gerrymandering. We're simply balancing the playing field here, and I love to see it. And I'm not really scared by the threats, because, again, they want to draw a ridiculous map. Okay, let's go to court then. Do it, right? There's a reason, again, the DOJ is suggesting this one in particular, because it's stupid. All right. With that said, though, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.